Hello, everybody. I'm with Tom La Vecchia today. And am I saying that right, Tom?
You are. You're the first time you ever said an Italian name correctly.
Yeah, I mean that's my reputation. But I'm very glad to have you on here. I went after John Pennisi, and you were part of that show, and so you know I apologize for anything negative that I said toward you because as I get to know you more now, I find you're a very fascinating guy. And that's why I wanted you on. I wanted to ask you. You speak about a lot of knowledgeable stuff that a lot of people aren't speaking about right now.
Yeah.
And like I seen you on Vinny's show,
Yes.
Brooklyn Vinny,
Yeah.
and you brought up the fact of how podcasters like myself and FBS or guys that are like right on that
Yeah.
borderline, other things they could do to make money,
Yeah.
behind the scenes, and let's face it, this is a business.
Yeah.
And everybody knows I don't use a Cash App because I'm blessed. I live an okay life.
Yeah.
But you know what? There's no guarantee that's not going to happen sometime. And I respect anybody, even if they do, because as you know, this is a business.
Correct.
So what I wanted to ask you, you seem to be one of the few people that have these shows now that are actually 100% Italian.
Yes.
Can you
Yeah.
can you explain your heritage and what part of Sicily you're from?
Oh, not Sicilian. That's a good insult.
Okay.
No insult to my Sicilians because I've been to Sicily 3 times. I love it. I've been to all the mobbed up towns there, but more importantly, I've been to the most beautiful places there, like Marsala, San Vito del Capo, Palermo. Sicily is the secret of Italy, right? Everybody around the world goes to the Amalfi Coast. The Italians go to Sicily. That's a secret. But my family hails from Napoli, west of Napoli, about 2 miles east of Provincia Avellino. The small town is called Vallata. It's a very small town. Many of us emigrated from. I was born here, but my brothers and my parents were born there, and my sister is just now naturalized as dual citizen. I probably will as well. And just to give you a little background, you either kind of moved to like Elizabeth, New Jersey, Venezuela, Canada, or Argentina. So we were all like kind of a 5,000 person town, and about 2,500 moved to the different parts of Americas and South America. So yeah, so I'm first generation. Grew up in an Italian American household where Italian was spoken, and what always fascinated me, my mother actually annexed us away from anybody who was in the life because my father would go to the Ribera Club. That's the original Sopranos, the Cavalcantis, play Tiquanetta and lose a lot of money and hang out with the wise guys. My mother didn't like it. They eventually got divorced for many other reasons. And my mother annexed us away from it as much as where my first cousin married Bulls. They said did not go to the wedding. And then my other cousin who we do speak to, we have such a big family, so it's hard to get to everybody and see him in a few years, married John Riggi's granddaughter. So like I was around it growing up, but my mother, as a proud Italian American, annexed me away from the life.
Okay. And let me ask you, you had an original podcast and was called New
Yes.
Theory.
Yes.
And that New Theory, I went over the website and it discussed a lot of things. And what I wanted to ask you, what made you decide to go from New Theory to the Button Man with John Pennisi?
Great question. So I started New Theory in 2015 on my mother's birthday. You scroll to the bottom, it's in her honor. She died the year before. So I did it a year after and her first birthday of her anniversary. Not her anniversary of her death, but her first birthday a year after she died. I wanted to tap at the time into the millennial market. I really felt that millennials were going to take over, financially, spending power, marketing, and so forth. We had an article that went viral, got like 300,000 visits the first month. How people don't go to nightclubs because they sit there on Tinder or they drink at home or they like their craft beer, normal bottle service. So we kind of went viral in the beginning. Publishing is tough. I'll be the first to say it. So we kind of hit a wall in 16 and I had to let go most of my staff for New Theory, just a rough business publishing. So I have a sales book that I wrote, a bestseller. I think speak well. And people were always like, Tom, I would love to see what you said to that person. Please let me know. Just let me know how you influence them, how you got them. So like, why don't I start a podcast? Because I didn't have the written word, So I started with the spoken word, and that's how New Theory Podcast was born. Along the iterations, I would do people that I felt interesting, and I really wanted to, and people hate when I say this, is unpack and learn from them to help me in my own life, but to help our viewers. We had some great Gary Vaynerchuk. I don't know if you know him. He owns a 9-figure agency in New York City. He's huge on social media. Jordan Belfort, Wolf of Wall Street was on. Actors. Then I just noticed the mob genre kind of was a little higher. I would get 3, 4, unless they were super famous or A-list, or important on social media. The mob content was probably like 4 to 5x larger than others, right? My first interview was with Franzese in 17. I then interviewed Johnny Alite a few times. My Johnny Alite videos in aggregate have done over 500,000 views combined. So I know people don't like him. He has brought in numbers for New Theory. And then I hooked up with John Pennisi with a 9-part series that's still available, where I should encourage people to check out. John and I got together. It seemed like we clicked, kind of like what was that show? Oscar and Felix and Oscar, Odd Couple, a little bit of an odd couple, and we gave it a go. And then that's how the NBA Buttman was born. We had a nice run just south of 100 episodes.
Now, talking about John Alite,
yeah,
I heard recently that John Alite has been told by his people around him to stay that genre, the mob genre, so-called. I don't even consider it mob genre anymore.
Yeah,
he's been told to stay away because it's embarrassing, and that it would not be good for him. What do you think about that?
Well, I think there's a few things happening. The first is I've had John on multiple shows. I've spent time with him personally. I've spent time personally with him around Wise Guys, and he is the real deal, the real article. However, some of the things he says or said, that are being hashed out now, are they're turning out to be untrue or a little bit of an embellishment. So I'll be the first to say that, does John Alite embellish? Yes, he does, right? But I'm a personal friend of his, and I have no problem calling him up privately. I don't have to do it on air and say, hey, John, you know what? I love that you were on. Can you clarify this? Can you clarify that? Whether he wants to do it on air or not, it's not important to me. It's important to me as a comment podcaster. That's what I call it, commentary podcasting. And I'd like to get his side. His sons got a run-in that are still in Howard Beach. We reported on that. And we were getting messages from real street guys, because they were there. I don't know who they were from, that the sons got into it with not only like one guy of a made guy, but as much as 5 made guys were there, up to including Ernie Grillo. He didn't show up for that, but happened to be walking in and was there when it happened. And Ernie Grillo has his hands on both sides of the pond. People got to remember, these are very serious people. They're very dangerous people. So I can't imagine that incident does not have something to do possibly with the hiatus, but I don't know.
I'm sorry. You kind of broke up there at the end. What do you think that incident had to do with?
Well, so we were told from multiple reputable sources, there's a barbershop in Howard Beach. Both sons were there. They got into a tussle with a maid. I don't want to say names. Maid man's son. I believe the maid man was either with them or nearby. And then that's where we had him on. One story goes, the kids went in and busted up the place, which I don't believe. Another story was something happened outside. And then there was a gentleman that Alite was on the phone with both sides admit that they got into a shouting match. And this was a guy that John knew growing up, but he has since gotten a stripe. Again, and then we learned that Ernie Grillo showed up and a few others, and these were very serious guys. So, we reported it because it was breaking news. And again, I like John, but I had him on my podcast at the time, one-on-one. And he went off the rails talked about a lot of other things. I just wanted him to talk about that. So I know I got beat up about that, and I kind of owned it because I know better, because I'm a more experienced podcaster. But I can't imagine that situation hopefully diffused, and hopefully the kids are okay, because that's what it's about. Like, the second you get into like the mob and kids, it's not good.
Yeah, well, that's very interesting. Those are things that we don't hear. That we didn't hear that they're in there tussling with made guys' sons and stuff like that. So maybe they're like their father, and they're a little bit I don't give a shit. You know, to be blunt.
The other part happened is one of his sons got into it with the son of a captain of the Bananas who's away. And I can say this because it was public. John Pennisi said to him, gave an analysis and said, when this guy gets out of jail, maybe Alite or the son should be worried because it is a legitimate concern. Like there's still street guys out there. And, you know, Alite called me up and he wasn't crazy about the comment, but there's possibly some truth to it.
Well, you know, and that's another thing. I want to ask you. John Pennisi made a statement once, and I found it kind of hard to believe. And I'm just going to bring up this statement, and I'm going to ask you what you think about it. And I'm not knocking John Pennisi.
Yeah.
Okay. Because personally, I have no part of that life, and he did. But he said that, and this always bothered me. He said that he was following John Gotti Jr. and then he went into John Gotti Jr.'s son's. One of the people that he knows went in and was kind of trying to pick a fight with John Gotti's son, the fighter. And then he was talking about how he was looking for John Jr. to hurt him. What do you think of that story, honestly?
Well, I would say normally, I would give my opinion that would be based just in that opinion. But because Jerry Capisi likes to write about everything about that show, unfortunately, Lee, that's the one that I have to decline, unfortunately, because I don't want to end up on Gangling News again. I'm not a wise guy. I've been on there way too much. Out of respect to John and out of respect to Capisi, I just don't want to give him any more fodder. I'm an open book, but once in a while, our show was so current and so real that I understand there's some legal stuff being spun off from it, as well as Jerry Capisi reported the breakup of the show. So if I comment on this, I just don't want to end up on Gangland News again.
And did you notice the same day he reported on it, I dropped a video on it?
If it's a Thursday, probably, yeah.
Okay, and I noticed I was only one in the genre to drop a video on it. And it kind of went under the radar, which I'm not saying, but it did kind of go under the radar. And then the following day, I know it's Jerry Capisi. Jerry Capisi is a very powerful man.
Yeah, but he's not. Listen, this is a digital world, and it's a shame because like people like my age grew up on Jerry Capisi. He was on The Sopranos. I read his Al Diorco book. Like I'm historically a very big fan, and what I didn't like is he kind of came for me on the podcast, and I'm a civilian, so he kind of lost me on that. In terms of power, I get what you're saying. He typically, as I understand, has jockeyed with the FBI and law enforcement. It might have had some street credentials here and there. I think it's the opposite now. I think the FBI is done with him, and I think the street guy defense attorneys are getting to him to create their own spin.
There's a small podcaster on here who used an article of his on his show. And Jerry Capisi wrote him an email threatening to sue him. And
two words, Lee. Well, 3. Provide commentary. That's the title. But 2 words. Fair use, my friend.
Yes, exactly. So this guy called me up and he said, "Hey, Lee, this guy's threatening to sue me." And I said, "I don't care if he's Jerry Capisi. He's a public figure. Yeah. And the article's out there. You could use it. Correct. It's just like when we use these videos. People don't realize when you use somebody else's videos, you can put it up as long as you're using commentary during that
modifying
video.
It. Correct.
Yeah,
correct.
Like if you just can't show it up and play it.
Correct.
And there's a lot of rules and regulations that we don't realize. Like taking down someone's channel, people don't realize it's very difficult to do.
Correct.
Because YouTube knows that people have enemies out there, and they're going to flag you. And it's almost like literally impossible, but it can be done.
It's hard. It's hard to. The only way you can really get there. I'm not going to say the C word because if I do, you're not going to get any views. So if you kind of, maybe put out some medical information or perceived medical information, that can get you down. It's easy to get individual videos down, but yes, it's very hard to get a channel down.
Yes. Yep. Okay. So let me see. I'm going to talk to you. You had Hootie on.
Yes.
I'm going to play something from Hootie. I've always been fascinated about this.
Yeah.
See, I get a lot of slack because not slack. I get a lot of crap because people say, "Oh, he interviewed John Alite, he interviewed Hootie," and my attitude is, I don't care whether you like them or what you think of them.
Yeah.
They deserve to be interviewed,
Yeah.
and that's that. I don't think people should use their opinions on people not to interview them.
What one thing people have to understand is, and that's part of the reason why I wanted to do your show, is thank goodness since launched a new podcast, Armchair NBA, I lost some subs right away, but I picked up some subs because I provide commentary. I'm a podcaster. I'm not a journalist, but I am a podcaster. So if I'm going to do mob genre, you have a hybrid. You have some experts. I had Antonio Nicasso on, which is an expert in Calabria Mafia. I had Ramona Rizzo, who's Lefty Guns granddaughter, also a Mob Wives. So I wanted to get kind of that flavor, right? But then also you need some first party as well. But unfortunately, the local wise guy is not going to come on your show. So unfortunately, whether we like it or not, government does use informants. There are a lot of informants out there. So they're the ones who provide the first party content. It would be almost impossible to have a show in the mob genre and not have some representation from first party sources.
No. Well, here, I'm going to play this Hootie one. It's very short.
Okay.
What do you think of all these wars all this fighting going on between everybody?
I got serious problems in the streets. I'm not worried about any. I don't pay attention to the stuff going on YouTube.
When you say you have serious problems, when you say you have serious problems in the street, what do you mean by that?
Well, I got beefs with guys that I tell stories about that are still in Cosa Nostra. I got beefs with drug dealers that I mentioned in my stories. These guys, you don't want to be mentioned, don't want to be talked about. And the guys that I don't hear from or get messages from, because I get messages all the time. And the ones that I don't hear from are the ones you got to worry about. You think you just can talk about these guys and walk around the neighborhood like it's okay? Listen, I tell everybody, you may think the life is dead, but the people that involved in it and were involved in it aren't dead. They're walking the streets.
So do you see something happening here pretty soon where something bad's going to happen because of all this shit?
It's terrible.
Well, I play that. People, and one thing that people that say Hootie's stupid are stupid because Hootie's not stupid.
Yeah.
And people, now I'm going to get some pushback on that. The fact of the matter is, when it comes to Hootie, to me, he's his own worst enemy because he has the ability to be very good at what he does. And if he just laid back, didn't put up silly videos of when he's a little spacey, he would be fine because the guy was actually around hardcore gangsters.
Yeah.
And he was a member of, and he admits that he wasn't one of them. He admits that what he also admits is that he knew all these guys. He sat down with these guys, and there's no evidence to say he didn't.
Yeah.
And I just find him a fascinating character, even though people may disagree with me. What do you think about what he said there?
Okay, so I can speak to what he's saying. So I'm in New Jersey, which is a lot different than New York. I'm not like in Howard Beach. I'm not in Diker Heights, Bay Ridge, Bensonhurst. Even parts of Long Island. So I'm not in like a mobbed up area. However, there is some guys still around, right? And the challenge is a made guy. If I go to, I'm actually going to a restaurant. It's a surprise party, so I can't say when, but I'm going to a restaurant this weekend. And the owner is like a high ranking guy, coincidentally with the Lucchese's. And also it's frequented by a few DeCavalcantes there at the bar every Friday night, right? So they're not going to, if I'm on the show and I did some damage, they're not going to beat me up. That's not going to happen. What you have to worry about is like the nephew, the uncle, somebody who thinks they're going to get their stripe. I'm at ShopRite picking up diapers and I get cracked in the head, so like there is some element of danger out there. And to be honest with you, my life is a little less stressful after the NBA button man, because I always had a little bit of stress that either somebody may, accost me or want to know where John is or was. And I never knew where John lived. I never knew where John was. We had strict security protocols. I don't want to speak too much about it. So there is that element of being scared, as well as being an Italian American. I grew up around this stuff. And so when when I say people in my mother's town moved to Elizabeth, right? And that was the foundation of most of those guys came from Ribera, Sicily. and a lot of people from my mother's town married a lot of people from that town, because that's like half the town was Riberese and the other town was Valadez. So they all married each other, right? So my football coach was a made guy in the Cavalcantes, right? So I kind of grew up around it, right? But my mother was smart, and when they had enough money, I was around when we lived in the suburbs. I was around when I hung out in Brooklyn. I would hang out in Diker Heights. So I was always in like the administration areas, meaning I was not on the street in a social club, but I would be near Watchung, New Jersey, where the guy has a castle who's a captain with the Cavalcantes because he made money on H back in the day. So my representation of the mob is a lot different than a lot of other people. I saw like the golden era up into the 80s and 90s where these guys lived in the suburbs. They were relative. The Cavalcantes took a really big hit in the 90s, but they only got half the family. The other half was okay. So my representation of the mob, believe it or not, is not the social clubs. Here's $20. It's these guys are in big homes in wealthy areas, because that's kind of where I was. My mother worked hard to get us in these circles, and that's kind of what I grew up on. So I actually, weird sort of way, I grew up with maybe some sort of positive reinforcement about being in the mob financially, to be honest with you.
And let me ask you a question. If someone came to you and said to you, hey, listen, I know this guy that spent 2 years working with John DiGiorgio. John DiGiorgio is the brother of Victoria DiGiorgio, who was married to John Gotti. What would you say if you found out about that person that worked 2 years with John DiGiorgio?
It's more common here. I would have no opinion because it's more common here. Not as much now, but if you were in like construction, you were in certain businesses, you were tangentially associated with the mob. Like it was inevitable. So for me, it was a commonplace. I actually remember I was going golfing at a golf course, and he's since passed. I don't want to use his name, but he's since passed. And it was a made guy with the Cavalcantes. He worked there. He worked the front desk. And a lot of guys I know are the old school guys that kept their jobs, that kept their landscaping business, that kept their fronts, and even did very well legitimately as well. So I have no opinion if somebody did, work with the mob. I personally and generally steer clear of associates and like made guys socially, because it's a vortex and you can get sucked in.
Well, that person I'm describing is me. I worked 2 years with John DiGiorgio.
Oh, wow.
And these people here, they mock and make fun and stuff, and they don't understand that if you're around certain people, that means you're around certain people.
Yeah, but it doesn't taint you either. Like, it doesn't make you an associate or doesn't make you a bad guy.
Exactly. You hit it right on the button.
Yeah.
Shady things were being done, there's no doubt.
Oh,
but,
yeah.
But he also had a legitimate business, and he had it with another guy who had all the topless clubs in New York. They had that business together.
Oh.
And, I know, I at one time got along with Angel Gotti, and Angel Gotti knew this from the very beginning, that I worked for 2 years with her uncle.
Oh, wow.
But, that's stuff that's not out there. It's like, oh, Lee's this dumb old man from Texas. I actually grew up in Brooklyn.
Yeah, you're a Brooklyn guy, right? Originally,
I worked at Skateros in the Meat Cutters Union, and
wow.
Skateros.
That was Castellano, Western Beef, and those guys. Yeah,
and every day I walked in there, and every day I came out of there, and I never claimed to be a made guy, but I knew a lot of them, and because that was one of their headquarters over there. And right there on the same street as Skateros, and it's kind of funny though, because people perceive who people are. Yes. Right away. I'm from Texas. No, I lived in New York until I was 32 years old.
Yeah.
And then in 1992, when I see New York was started turning, I knew it was time to get out.
Yeah. I heard you're a big de Blasio fan.
Oh yeah, well, okay. No, I'm not actually, but I am a big Rudy Giuliani fan. People can say what they want, because you have a lot of Italian Americans that back during that time didn't like Giuliani, because a lot of New York Italian Americans are old school Democrats.
Yeah,
but I'm talking about old school Democrats.
Old school, but that changed. And interesting enough is, the Democrats have historically, have historically been lighter on sentences, claim to, typically have bleeding hearts, work release programs, and so forth. When Pataki came in after Cuomo, he reversed a lot of those. and who's in jail? The wise guys. So the wise guys, ironically, tend to be more right now, but it's the Republicans that are law and order historically and have put stiffer sentences on the wise guys, with the exception of the President T, because if you say his name too, you get demonetized or whatever. And I'm not talking politics, but he did launch a First Step Act with Tim Scott from, I think, South Carolina.
Yes.
And that was a great program because there was a lot of guys, because proportionally black men are able to spend time with their family because of what President T did. And this is a fact. It's not getting political. This is a fact.
You know, and I was working with John DiGiorgio at that time when they came down on all the unions and stuff that were controlling the garbage industries.
Yes.
Like they were charging like quadruple the price to pick up garbage from the Empire State Building.
Yeah,
the price was astronomical. And then they came in and they arrested most of those guys lived in Westchester County. At that time when I was working with John,
I was very Genovese heavy. Very were in, but very Genovese heavy.
And when I was working with John DiGiorgio, I was up in the Somers area. Yeah. And as you know, that's a big Italian area. And a lot of those guys, those maid guys, lived up there.
Yep.
And you know, it's a fascinating area because these guys have so much money that they don't know what to do, but they can afford to live in Westchester County.
Well, I have an opinion on this, and this is where I think, and this is what like the Armchair MBA is going to cover, is this is where they screwed up Lee, because you seem like a smart guy, and you know, and it's ironically an Italian expression, mangi uovi not i pollo, eat the eggs, not the chicken. So if you eat the chicken, the eggs die, but if you eat the eggs, you may eat less, but you eat for life. So they pilfered the garbage industry. They pilfered, as you know, Hunts Point. They pilfered San Gennaro. They pilfered the meat markets.
Yeah.
They pilfered the concrete club and the construction. So rather than get an 8-year run or a 20-year run and blow it out with a certain few, might as well create these legal cartels, right? Legal operative word, where you have consortiums and you can do this legally, the garment industry and so forth, and you control the garbage. And instead of charging 4x than normal, you charge 1.5x, but you eat for life. And that's where I think the mob's downfall was not informants, it was greed.
Yeah. And you know, it's funny when President T, let's say, it's a shame that we can't say his name.
It's crazy.
But when he came into Washington, everybody was saying, oh, he's going to be eaten up by these congressmen and stuff. And I remember saying he built buildings where he had to deal with these mafia unions all the time.
Yep. Well, he shared the same attorney. Ray Cohn was half of the administration's attorney. I still think he dropped off retainers for Cohn, and Fat Tony Salerno walked out with refunds, but that's just my opinion.
And this is why I always said he's not going to be scared of these congressmen. He's not going to be scared of anybody. He dealt with the most ruthless men going, guys in the unions. You know what? I want to speak about one thing. There was a guy that was killed, and I'm sure you're going to know who he is. He was shot 3 times in the head, and he was left for 3 days in the garage of the World Trade Center. Do you know who I'm talking about?
DiBono?
Yes.
Yeah.
Very good. Well, DiBono was an interesting character.
Yes.
Because he was a very powerful man. And then when John Gotti Sr. came in and took over, he kind of didn't like it because he always dealt with Castellano and he was making a lot of money with Castellano. Yep. And everybody talks about the reason he was killed, but the real reason he was killed is because he had a lot of money. He had controlled all the industries building the trade centers.
Yeah, drywall and so forth. Yeah.
Everything. And he had these steel beams and he got in trouble for not fireproofing them properly. It was a fascinating story. But then I was reading where he was taken out. And then as soon as he was taken out, if you listen to John Gotti on the tape, someone said to John Gotti, well, he's willing to bring you $50,000. But John Gotti and Gravano were thinking he's worth a lot more than that.
Yeah.
And 80% of what he got after he was killed went to John Gotti, and the other 20% went to Gravano.
Yeah.
And this came out of when Gravano actually was talking to the FBI.
Yeah.
So what do you think when you hear stories about why DiBono was killed, and it was so obvious why he was killed.
Yeah, so I always say typically when these things happen, it's an iceberg, right? And it could be the PR story, the external story to the brigade is he didn't call because he got killed because when I called he didn't come, right? So what does that do? That reinforces you as the boss. So what happens when you call? He comes. He was recorded yelling at Tony Muscatello's wife, "Where's your husband? Where's your husband?" And like threatened. I don't know about threatened, but I don't think he would do that over the phone. But like was really upset with the wife because Tony Muscatello didn't come when he was called. This is public information. So my point being is it was a smart move in a sense where the reason was a tip of the iceberg, which was, hey, we need to get rid of this guy because he didn't stand on ceremony or he didn't follow protocol. But the real reason was probably economic. So it's kind of that was actually probably one of his smarter moves if that was his objective.
And another talking about Sammy Gravano, I consider Sammy Gravano, and I hate to say this because I despise the man.
Well, I'm friends with Karen, so I might take it a little easier.
No, I'm talking about more about the biggest cover up, the kid.
Yeah.
Okay, and that cover up, because I was reading the FBI interviews that he did, and the FBI conveniently took out the part of Alan Kaiser. Yeah,
I mean, what's crazy is, and again, it you have the government. They made a deal with him, right? And I can't comment on it, not because I'm trying to hide. I don't know like if it was in there or not in there, but that was Mueller and those guys. I mean, the same people that went after President T. So I don't know. I mean, it's a dicey business. My only, not to get too political, but my only beef, right? And don't get me wrong, if you're in the mob and you get caught, you should go to jail. If you're a criminal, you should go to jail. But there's been like a disproportionate amount of activity against Italian American criminals and Italians just because it's sexier, even to the point there was an FBI agent who came out, Lee, you appreciate this, that said if you wrote up like a resource request and there was an Italian last name or ended in a vowel or the word mob was in there, funding galore. You need agents, you need resources, you need bugs. But if it was for anybody else, it was crickets. So not to get too political. If you go into jail, you deserve it. But I just think Italians were disproportionately affected by the RICO and some of these other laws.
Oh, without a doubt. And the sentences they were getting, I'll give you an example.
Football numbers. Yeah.
The example is the young Gotti that Gene Borrello testified against. Yeah. That poor guy, he had no chance because his last name was Gotti when he hit the courtroom.
Yep.
Because the sentence he received would have been 1/3 of the sentence that another person that came along. But if you have the last name of Gotti, you're in trouble.
Well, look what happened with Cassio. Even Sammy comes out now, and this is crazy. The prosecutor saying by Cassio not stopping Gotti, or even just maybe nodding in agreement but not saying anything, was complicit in a RICO for one of the murders. And the guy, then went for compassionate release, which a ton of people. That's the other thing too. Compassionate release came around, and there were a ton of criminals that got out of jail, but a lot of the mobsters were denied. I think Huck Carbonaro, Locasio, and a few others. And it's like they're older men. They're 89 years old. Where are they going? They're going to go out to a borgata or a social club. They're going to go out there to bed and spend a little time with their grandchildren. So again, I think disproportionate. And my only knock about that whole system is their conviction rate is like 96%. I think in Eastern, and I think Southern is like 97%. You want to be a governor, you want to be a senator, you want to be a judge, you want to be a vice president someday. You go through there, and there's that path. And the best part is, where's the path before there? Harvard, Yale, right? Not many guys like you and me are going through that system. So these guys and gals will put you away longer and nail you harder just for a $10,000 raise. It's insane.
Oh, without a doubt. And, if you look at the sentence like they passed, they're letting people out of jail right now that have murdered people.
Yes.
Literally murder. And they're giving them like $5,000 bail and they're getting out. And then you got these old timers. But getting back to Sammy,
Yeah.
And I want to talk about Sammy because Sammy's a very fascinating character.
Yeah.
Probably one of the most fascinating characters, most fascinating gangsters that ever lived.
I've never met him, so I don't know him personally.
And the reason that I don't respect him in many ways, but the one thing I do respect about him is this guy reinvented himself. If someone said to you, Tom, 20 years ago that Sammy will be back and bigger than ever and 90% of America would love him, what would you have said?
Never in a million years. I thought he was going to die in ADX. I mean, to be candid.
Yeah. And that's like the comeback story, because you remember when the rats were on the newspapers with his face on them?
Oh, there were not only the rat on the front page of the Daily News and the New York Post. If you were in New York at the time, there were blow up rats in certain neighborhoods. They would hand them out. They were trying to turn over the cars. There was a local PR campaign against him because they wanted to try to influence the jurors.
And I hear that his daughter had a lot to do with re-imaging him. Which
I don't know. Karen's a friend. I used to spend maybe just like COVID and everything else. I haven't talked to a lot of people, not just her. I spent more time with her years ago. I was very friendly with her when she was on the show. We still keep in touch. I'm a little bit friendly with Ramona, who came on the show, but I'm gonna have Karen on and I can ask her about it. I think Gerard actually has a little bit of a bigger role. I think they live together or near each other, and Gerard is a good business guy. I met Gerard at her book launch party. A good friend of mine is very close friends with Gerard. I think he has a lot to do with it as well. That's just my guess.
And whether you listen, I don't like Sammy because of that whole thing, but I don't think Sammy gives a shit if I don't like him. And on top of that, he doesn't give a shit who doesn't like him. He's that type of guy.
That's so I think again, people hate when I say this, but when you unpack like what he's doing, right? Good, bad, or ugly, he's a gangster, right? Anthony Castle, granted he rolled, but he was a gangster. Like Scarpa. Like, there's just certain guys, they're just gangsters, right? And the truth of the matter is he's living his truth. I may embellish, people feel he embellishes or maybe hinders stuff, but that's part of being a gangster. He never claimed to be a choir boy, So I think one of the things that I believe is working for Sammy, and remember, I'm the marketing guy. So like I look at the marketing, the branding, the production quality, that kind of stuff. I don't heed my own advice because I'm too cheap, but I'll get there. But with that said, I feel that he's true to himself. He's staying in his lane, and that's why he's successful. One of the little known facts, and again, I'm friendly with Mike Franzese. He was on my show. I may have him back on soon. But his subs, a good portion of them, his foundation was in the Christian ministry space. I don't know, a lot of people know that. So like if you take away the Christian ministry space, his subs may be similar to Sammy's, and the mob genre is not that big. It probably caps out. Like if you were to capture a large portion of the market share, the mobologists, if you will, and the mobophiles are probably in around 500,000 at most. It's not that big of a genre.
Yeah, and it's not that big of a genre without a doubt. But I have I'm pretty much friendly with Gunner, and
we had him on the show as well. I might reach out to get him on Armchair. I thought he's an interesting cat. I like him.
I had him on a couple weeks ago, and he brings you good numbers.
Yeah.
But his problem is he brings me good numbers, but he's not bringing himself good numbers at this time because of the fact that he did something that there's an old saying, if it's not broke, don't try to fix it. And he did. And I remember me and him had a little debate about this where he said that he wants to get away from the mafia genre stuff. And I said to him, well, you're selling products with mafia genre on it. It makes no sense.
Yeah.
And he did it though. And when he did it, his numbers went way down.
Yeah. So I remember him saying it, and I remember you commenting on it. He said it a little differently, but I got the gist of it. And then you kind of exploited it, which that's what Lee Cole does. That's why I'm here. Hopefully you'll exploit me in a positive way. And it was one of those like Homer Simpson moments of so the truth of the matter is, I think just my opinion, this goes into three segments, this niche, if you will. The first is the mobologist. These guys go on Black Hand Forum. It's history lessons for them. It's academic. Like they'll like the Antonio Nicasso interview because it talks about the Calabria mob. Those are like the academics, the nerds. They fly out to the mob museum. And these folks are the hardcore mobologists. So they're in category A. Category B are, if I could bucket us together, are people that grew up kind of around the life, right? Not in the life, or not wise guys, never claimed to be wise guys. But you know what? Oh shit, you know what? I knew Zio Toto was a wise guy. Or you know what? Like I knew that bakery was a little off, and like we grew up kind of around it, but not enough to see past the veneer. And now we're super interested. The same reason why we collect Transformers. It's what we grew up on. We're nostalgic. That's group 2. Then group 3 are people like from Finland that are obsessed with anything with a vowel, like those international UK, Finland. Like I rank so well in Finland. It's insane. I do better in Finland than I do in Italy.
So you're talking
about
about
the 3 buckets. So in terms of monetization, you have to follow your audience, right? So group 1 doesn't buy shirts. They get them good information that they don't already know, right? You'll make that on the super chats, or you'll make that on the monetization. The middle group, those are the guys and gals you're going to sell shirts to and merch to, and that's enough to get. And also the international guys too. We've shipped stuff internationally all the time. And when we did sit downs, most of the sit downs were with international folks, not US. So those are the 3 buckets that I characterize as a mob space, probably about a few 100,000 that are into it. And he kind of turned 2 out of 3 off, which probably wasn't the right move.
Yeah, and okay, now I'm enjoying this conversation because we're talking about certain gangsters.
Yeah.
And whether people want to say John Alite's a gangster or not, John Alite did stuff in the life. End of story. You can't argue with that. So what I like to ask you about John Alite has found every time you think he's down and out, he comes up on some big show on TV.
Yeah.
And he knows how to exploit the foreign market. And he's doing very well in that. So what is your opinion on people trying to knock this guy down? And they're not, he is a survivor. You could say what you want about him, but the guy, they've done everything to take this guy out but he doesn't go away.
Yeah, that's a great point. And this is not anything he told me. It's not insider information, just me being on the outside. So one of the things that I think is happening is there's a lot of people against him, right? And it's the players. We don't need to name them. Right. I'm friendly with some of them. I have respect for them. Again, I always say I may not agree with what you're saying, but I respect for your right to say. It's freedom of speech, First Amendment. So I get like where they're coming from. I don't think he met Castellano. I don't think he told Joe Gallo that he was getting, benched. So I think certain things that were super embellished or maybe untrue that really could trip him up, right, or has tripped him up, right. However, though, everything is a cause and effect, and he's still getting media spots. He's still doing shows. He's still getting revenue. So my big thing is rather than go for him hard and try to bring him down, possibly work to build up your own brand, and it'll be better, and let him be. Because they're almost like, we talked about this offline just now. If you have Johnny Alite on your show, your numbers go up. And that's the name of the game, is visibility to gain subscribers, to build a community. So whether people like it or not, their goal is to prove him to be a liar, but they're serendipitously helping him grow, because it's almost like people think it's like a train wreck. Oh, this guy's lying. And then what do people do? They don't turn away when they see a train wreck. They watch it. And these views hit the algorithm to get more people. And remember, we talked about 3 different buckets. The mobologists don't have a moral contradiction that he's an informer. So the first bucket doesn't care. Now the middle bucket, they're like, he's a rat. I don't like him. So maybe he loses the middle bucket. But then the international guys like him, right? So when Gunnar might have knocked out 2 out of 3, Alite doubles down on 2 out of 3, and they're enough to keep his revenue stream going. So my opinion would be is maybe tone down the rhetoric against him, take down the website and the anti-fan pages, and focus on your own brand. And that's where I think time and money are better well spent.
What do you think about people, let's say they slung crack on a street corner for about 20 years, and then they're attacking John Alite, saying what a piece of shit he is.
Well, I have a huge conflict there. I lost my brother to drugs. So, whenever it comes to drugs, when people that deal drugs, that's why I'm so like torn. I'm really into kind of like the Sicilian mob in terms of the history, the Ndrangheta, which is a Calabrians, a Camorra, but they're drug dealers, So like I like the whole honor system and the whole camaraderie. But then I'm like, you know what? Like, was that import heroin part of what killed my brother? So like, I'm conflicted on that. But like I said, I believe two things, but I also believe I'm Catholic growing up. I'm a Christian, not super religious, but I always say this on the podcast. It's not where you start, it's where you end. So I just hope that person that is getting on John that might have sold crack or whatever drugs for 20 years, one, looks within, fix himself first. And I think a part of fixing himself would probably be less critical of it.
And I'm not talking about any individual person. I'm talking about people that have these channels. A lot of them come from suspicious backgrounds, me included. So, it's just the way it is. I was a criminal for a long period of time, and I'll be the first person to admit it. But I didn't deal drugs.
Yeah.
And I was a criminal that went after money and made some stupid mistakes. If I could do it all over again, I don't even know if I could say yes, because I've lived a pretty exciting life.
Yeah.
And if someone ever told me that I'd be my age on YouTube doing this, I would say, what are you, crazy? I had this channel, just so you know, for about 2 years, and I got away from it and went and helped my son build up his channel. And then I came back and I said, what can I do to reimage?
Yeah.
And then I said, let me try this mafia thing. And then I did my very first video with my son.
Yeah.
And it got like 2,000, 3,000 views in one night. I'm like,
oh wow.
Maybe I got something here.
Yeah.
And the next thing I knew, I'm fully into it. And I've had my ups and downs. Okay. And I'm sure you tell me what you think of me.
Okay. Let's think. It's a load of questions.
Be honest, I'm not sensitive. I get hit hard every day.
Okay. So I was first aware of your channel when Jimmy Calandra posted and say, hey, I'm getting interviewed by Lee Cole. Okay. So that I think was a good move. So in any YouTube channel or space, you generally work and collaborate with the bigger channels in order to reach their audience to get you more subs. That's just the name of the game. Pretty simple. So strategically, I think you have the right path, and strategically, you know what you're doing. I think tactically, I think you're nuts. So you got into it with your guest afterwards, and then I'm like, all right, that's a one-off, right? So maybe like him and Calandra get along. Then you have like FBS on it. I think you had a head start on FBS, I believe, and maybe helped him a little bit. And then you guys got into conflict, and then you had like Jeff Nadeau on, like, and you had conflict with him, and if I remember correctly, he was trying to diffuse the conflict, like. So I just think that you can benefit by ongoing collaboration versus the shock value. Because I think there's a lot, you believe it or not, I think you have a lot more substance and style. And if you let the substance ooze out and have more interviews like this where they're positive and collaborative, you'll grow. I just think you kind of fought with a lot of people. The A-Light thing threw me off. I was okay personally if you're going to have A-Light on, because you're like me, you can have an opposition on, right? But then you're like, afterwards, you're like, well, I was a double agent, and then like you dump can of shades, and then.
No, I didn't dump Cane Shades.
Yeah, what happened with all that?
No, Cane Shades is a good guy.
Yes, he's a good guy.
But he warned me. He said to me, if you associate with A-Lights or do an interview, I can't stay on your show.
Well, but did you have that discussion with him? Say, here's the options. Option one.
Yes, I had a very good discussion. Matter of fact, his favorite line, and I always tease him. He said to me, Lee, I'm with you all the way until the wheels fall off. Yeah, and I made a little quote about it, and he played it. But he calls me. We're friends. We're actual friends.
Got it.
He's one of those rarities where he didn't hold a grudge. He was like,
what I don't get is, and at this point you could be transparent. There's no reason to lie. I don't think you would. You had A-Light on but I was confused. What was the goal? Like was it like I got confused because then like you came back and you're like it was a ruse and I'm confused.
Okay, well, it was a horrible interview, and I got a lot of views off of it.
Yeah.
Because his phone kept breaking up, first of all, and he was outside. And I actually wish I could interview him straight up like I'm interviewing you right now.
Yeah.
And on top of that, I had a lot of pressure on me because I was asking him really good questions, but I wasn't following them up.
Yeah.
And that was the downfall with that interview. And yes,
Yeah, but afterwards is a PR disaster. What happened there?
Was it really a PR disaster?
I'm filtering what's out there, and you're welcome to hit the.
Well, let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
Every show on here uses my name and talks to their chat room every night. I got shows that put my name all the time in their tag sentence. I have one right now called The Mob Show. It's not a very good show, but anyway, this guy is purposely using my name in his tag sentence every night and attacking me. And he doesn't realize you're not attacking me, dude. You're putting me in the algorithm. See, this is the thing they don't understand. Algorithm.
That's true. That is true. I can confirm that.
And the more you attack me, negative or positive, you're putting me in the algorithm. If you put Sammy Gravano and Jimmy Calandra onto Google, guess who pops up in between them?
Well, no, I don't disagree with that strategy in terms of like I think you could be the hardball interviews. I think you could be the shock value guy, and you can own it and you can live.
That's why I'm interviewing you right now, because you're an intellectual, and these guys might joke around and say that I'm not an intellectual, but I consider myself a pretty smart guy, whether they like it or not.
I find you very intelligent. I mean, the only thing is, like I said, the only thing that threw me off was afterwards it was like, hey. Like what's going on with Alite? And I think it got like a little misconstrued, but I think you recovered, and that's what matters.
Well, and you know something, I recovered despite, sometimes you recover despite stupid things you do. I'm not going to say that I didn't make mistakes here. Oh my gosh, I made lots of mistakes. But the biggest mistake I made is being friends with the wrong people. And another thing that, and this is kind of a me interview now, but I might as well. But the thing that really hurt me was I had to understand that it wasn't just one side that was vicious. It was everybody's vicious in this.
Yeah.
And you got to remember, it's the backgrounds they come from. If you are coming from the streets and you dealt drugs, or you're a drunk, or you beat someone up, or you have a streak of bad in you. And so these people that are attacking people and claiming that, there's some type of, they're fighting for justice, let's say.
Well, let me ask you a question. I'll kind of like, let's say you were on my show.
Yeah.
Where do you think your biggest mistake has been thus far since podcasting in the mob genre? Biggest mistake by far. What is it?
Coming in and trying to side with people.
Okay. Now
I should have came in as independent, stayed away from it for friendships, just done my show. End of story.
Got it. I had a learning last night, and like, I'm a smart guy, must not be that smart because I didn't get it. Where I jumped on FBS's channel, and the funny thing is I'm getting a lot of stuff for that, but I get along with Chris, I get along with you. I don't say anything negative about anybody. Like my strategies get more exposure for the new show. It's working. The numbers are up, but then I'm finding out that I'm getting along with certain people. So I'd love to be a recurring guest, and you're welcome to come on my show. We're human, right? Now, I asked Gunsmoke, which I think you got on as well. I said, what's your favorite, mob tube? What's your favorite show in the genre? And he said something that I never thought of. He goes, are you talking mob tube or the rat channels? Right now, I didn't know there was a distinction. I thought MobTube was encompassing of, from Jimmy Calandra to Mob Rats Exposed to Lee Cole to FBS to Armchair NBA and so forth, right? So I didn't know that people looked at it like that. So there's a huge divide with it. Let's remember, there's 300,000 total universe, right? And then within that universe, there's a small number under 10,000 where most of us are living, right? I'm about 8,000 subs, right? But below that, there's even another level that below that there's just a divided audience. So what you did was you divided a divide of a divide. That's why I think it was a mistake. And if I were you, I would continue interviews like this, ask some really good questions, and I would branch out a little bit. On my channel, I'm interviewing a former Banana associate a little later. He's born in Sicily because I'm on a Banana kick right now. I don't know why, I just am. And then I'm going to migrate to Jersey, but I'm also going to do a lot of business episodes. There's a lot of guys that are former street guys that want to learn about drop shipping, that might want to sell loans, they might want to side hustle because you know what, they got a criminal record and they need to get out of it. Not that I'm anything special, but I would love to help guys out. And I'm not saying it's for the kids. My demographic that
Please
watches,
don't. No, don't.
that's the other part too. Everybody was like the NBA button man. They said it for the kids. We never said that. Our demographic was from 28 to 59. I will show it. That's the data.
That's the data. You hit it right on the button.
But there's a lot of guys out there that can benefit from a career redirect. And I'm going to create some content around that. But probably dinged. Numbers might not be as good. I have to put some of it on New Theory. But it's important to me to help guys out and not to knock anybody else. But I'm very sympathetic to the Italian American community because that's where I'm from. I will help anybody, but I'm especially empathetic towards Italian Americans.
Well, you know, me, I'm an Irishman, and that's what I am. And you know, and I'll never claim to be an Italian. I'll never claim to be.
Well, the way you're pronouncing the last names, I didn't figure you would.
But you know something, people make fun of it. But you know what? That's something I'm known for.
But that's part of the shtick. That's part of the shtick. Remember the Howard Stern days? A part of the shtick, you know?
You know, and that's a lot of things that they don't realize. I watch shows that say they're not going to talk about me, but yet they spend a whole show talking about me. Yeah. You know, and you know, they'll say, I'm not going to use the guy's name. But then if you look at the chat room, they're all saying my name, even though the host ain't saying my name. And I'm sitting there laughing. It's like let
me ask you a question. Do you have a content schedule and an arc, or you literally wake up and you're like, I'm just going to do this today?
No, I have a plan. Do you know who Ed Scarpo is?
Of course, Cosa Nostra News.
Okay. Did you see a story that he did on me yesterday?
I did not. We'll check.
You should watch. You should take a look at it.
He has to update more often. If Ed's watching, I'm a big Ed fan. Ed actually contributed to one of the better articles on New Theory about the 5 families a few years back. I'm a big Ed fan. Ed Scarpo is a good guy. I will check out the article. He needs to post more often. He and some of the other websites did, you know, what's that expression? Rising tide or high tide raise all boats, something like that. And Ed Scarpo and like some of those other guys that were out there could have benefited from the mob genre by jumping on YouTube or writing more. I think everything went from the Gangland News, the Cosa Nostra News, 5 Family NYC, and migrated over to us. And hopefully Ed will get back on track.
I think also with Ed, what I've noticed with Ed, he's a hardworking man outside his what he's doing. It's more, and people don't realize. A lot of people, we don't, you know, make money, or not me, but people don't make that much money off what they're doing.
I got into an argument. I didn't know better that, you know, for what we did for NBA and Buttman and for what I did with New Theory and like we're one of the few shows that have sponsorships, right? And we still have a sponsorship in JSV Capital for Armchair New Theory. And these relationships are very important. Why? Because it helps our clients get the money they need, whether business or personal, and it helps our sponsors. So I don't necessarily listen, trust me, I have no problem putting a Cash App up or a PayPal donation, but I work on the old traditional model of get a sponsor to subsidize. And also it makes you less beholden as well, because if you get like a Cash App, right, from somebody, it's a bigger number and they're on one side of the fence then it's like, oh, do I poo-poo this guy and not get the $100 sent to me? I'm not saying anybody gets controlled by that, but just by me personally, I like the sponsorship model that works best for me.
Yeah, and talking about that, you were saying something very fascinating on Vinny's Brooklyn Vinny show yesterday, and I love when I hear actual fascinating stuff. You were talking about what shows like my size or a little bit bigger, like FBS's size, can do to make extra money.
Yes.
Can you explain some of that stuff?
Yeah. So whenever you talk about monetization as a creator, this is entertainment. Nobody should be driving to anybody's house. I don't want to go to ShopRite and get stabbed. This is entertainment, right? So there's ways to monetize. Part one, you have that once you monetize, you can do the super chats. They take 30%. So if somebody has a Cash App, send it via Cash App, you only lose 3%. So you have that as your donation model, right? People will pay you either voluntarily or so that's the donation model. Number two, the views, right? It's not a lot. You pay like $4 or $5 for 1,000 views, but it adds up. You can make 1,000 a month if you have a vibrant channel. You talk about all the time, and this is the most important metric of all, I don't care what anybody says, is average watch time. Yes. A good video, let's say it's an hour long, gets watched 13 minutes. A great video gets watched about 22 minutes. That's the adult attention span. Yep. But what's funny is you put a 22-minute video on, it's good. They only watch 6, but that's another discussion. So number two is your average watch time and the views, and that's about $4 to $5 for every 1,000. The third is you could have sponsorship, which is somebody will pay you roughly $25 to reach 1,000 viewers. And also you can get, as your audience gets bigger, you can charge them more. And generally, and you probably know this, Leaks, I think you have a radio background, right? If I'm not mistaken.
My family does.
Yeah. So generally you can do 3 on-air reads. So we had 2 sponsorships for NBA. I have one for JSV. JSV stuck with me on Armchair. So I have 1, but you can get up to 3. And you could do a pre-roll, you could do a mid-roll, and you could do an end roll. And you can even as much as 9 sponsors. So the sponsorship model could be a local restaurant. If you look and say, wow, my demographics in New York, right? If you have a restaurant, people check it out. So my point being is that's a sponsorship model. And then last is generally the affiliate. Affiliate is you could sign up with Audible and say, hey, guys, check out my free book. I'm doing a book on the Lufthansa heist. Check it out. If you sign up, you get 30 days free. And then Audible or Amazon will give you $75 when that person signs on. So that's an affiliate, almost as if you're a salesperson, right? So I think all the creators can benefit by collaborating together to share audiences. That's what people don't get. I got a lot of crap for being on FBS, and I respect that because he was very critical of my co-host, right? But remember where I come from. I do believe in free speech. I may disagree with him, but you and I could have an active disagreement, but we could still chat. Number two, FBS had a direct, and this is why I respect him, had a direct issue with me, called me out. I'm in the Costco buying diapers. I jumped on, we squashed it, and we moved on, right? So if everybody collaborates, the audiences can get bigger, and it's only better for the genre. And those are kind of the aforementioned models on a way to monetize your channel. Because a lot of people want to jump in too. I'm getting messages all the time. Hey, I want to do this too. I want to do this too. And that's essentially how you monetize your channel.
And Tom, that's what a lot of people don't realize. And I laugh at them because they'll make statements. Oh, Lee put out a video and only got 1,000 views on it.
That's okay.
But what they don't understand is I got 1,000 views and people watch for 30 minutes.
On top of that, correct. So it could be more than one commercial. And then on top of it, if it sticks, meaning if you do 50 videos and you do, another 20,000 or new views, you might have another 20,000 that it's almost like rent, recurring revenue if it's what they call evergreen content. I like to do evergreen content, which is, hey, what is a Calabrian? Who is a Calabrian Mafia, or what is the Calabrian Mafia about? I don't get into Antonio Nicasio and I talked about X. Evergreen content is something that you do that can live on forever, and that can make nice residuals for the future.
Yes. And I'll give you an example. And I took all the numbers and I put them in. I have right now almost 2,400 viewers, but if you take the watch time, it equals over 10,000.
Yes.
So, and people just don't get it. It's not whether you have how many subs you have. It's
Correct.
Meaningless. Once you get monetized, you get a certain segment of loyal people.
Well, you want to hear something interesting is the NBA button man, a little better with Armchair, a little better because for what a few reasons, not negative, just a few reasons. 57% of the NBA button man audience were non-subscribers. 57%, and I bet you, and if you don't mind, post follow-up, email me or text me. I bet yours is higher. I'm going to tell you why.
It's
people don't want to admit to what they watch it, but they watch it.
Yeah, it's like Donald Trump. Some people just don't like to admit things.
Yeah.
Yes, actually, it's very high. 20% of my audience are subscribers.
Yeah. So you
So
you can
yeah.
literally your equivalent might be as much as 8 to 10,000 subs.
Well, I'm going to start pushing please subscribe to my station. I mean, my channel. But I always forget. It's because I get into doing like this interview that I'm doing with you. I'm thinking about while I'm doing it. It's such a good interview that what I'm going to do is cut it in half and turn it into two.
Well, let me ask. I got another question for you. So you were a little harsh on John, and I kind of serendipitously got brought in. Did you see the show and then like kind of not like me because I was with him? Did you never check out the show? And I got lopped in. I just want to know. And I'm not here to talk about
attacked
John. I'm just wondering how I got lopped in with Lee Cole's diatribe.
I attacked John Pennisi to be part of the crowd.
Got it. Did you ever watch the show?
Yes, I did. I find John kind of a slow speaker. I think it kind of hurts him, but I find that at times he was a very interesting speaker. I think he writes better than he speaks. Because I read some of the stuff he writes. And some people are just like that, like you'll see a lot of people will say it when I'm done, hey, Lee, you're one interesting bastard, or you know how to present stuff. It's the way you speak, and there's another.
So hold on. I want to dig a little deeper though. So I kind of got thrown in. I told you we're good, right? So trust me, got a thick skin. I actually did a little episode earlier. I think you saw it, right?
I'm going to show it.
Top 11 things I've been called, and
it's a 6-minute video. I'm going to show for sure.
Yeah, there you go. But like I was called the clown, right? So I'm just wondering, like, did you at least like confirm I was a clown, or just was I like am I guilty to prove innocent? Like, what's going on?
The problem with the mafia genre, and I'm guilty of this, and I'm going to stop being guilty of it.
Yeah.
You want to fit in with certain groups and certain sides and attack certain people. And but we
were like kind of on our own island, meaning we didn't align with any other
We were running out of material. We had to jump on another island.
Got it.
Our island was getting full, so
so you being critical of a bigger channel is not the wrong move. It just kind of a little bit how you went about it. But
well, John said one thing. Great. John did one thing that bothered me, and we talked about that in the beginning.
Yeah,
when he was talking about following John Gotti Jr. around, I felt that to be bullshit. I'm sorry. This is how I felt it, because I'm sorry if they're going to send someone after Junior, it's not going to be a guy that was just made like him. That's just he doesn't come on.
That's the other thing too. For all the lawyers that are listening, when I get subpoenaed, if I ever get subpoenaed, this is for entertainment purposes only. Hit that smash like button. And the truth of the matter is, I get Capisi, these other guys, and they're trying to get their subscriptions and get their numbers up. I am like the least interesting guy I know, and I was just very unsure why I got roped into a lot of the Capisi stuff. I was actually shocked at that. I can't I'll wake up on a Thursday morning and have somebody screenshot me calling basically me a douchebag, and I just thought it was unwarranted.
Well, I'm going to tell you something. One thing Pennisi and Pasquale did is now the government's going to look different at these guys coming out of out prison. They're going to make more requirements of them, and they're not going to allow them to come on these networks and talk, because what's happening is you're having these guys coming out embarrassing the government. And the government, the biggest mafia in the world, is not going to allow that. They're going to come after you. And that's, in my opinion, what's going on right now with Pasquale.
I have absolutely no comment because I do not want my face and likeness used in a courtroom. So I will remain silent.
Let me
on this.
You're more than welcome to use my face and do whatever you want.
There we go.
But you're younger than me. You got your old thing going on in New York. I'm here in Texas. If you subpoena me from Texas, the odds of me coming, I'm going to go to my doctors. I'm going to get a notice that says I can't make it.
It's not that I'm worried about subpoena, because I'm not worried about the truth. It's just that I'm a smart guy and I would want some legal representation with me. And I have a guy in retainer that I use for a whole bunch of other stuff. I don't need to add to that retainer. I really don't.
Well, I appreciate your honesty about it. And I totally understand where you're coming from. And talking about that, what's your honest opinion of Gene Borrello?
So I had Gene on my podcast, and I remember this Mother's Day of 19 or 20. God, I'm getting old. It was on a Mother's Day, I think 2019, and the show did well. I learned a lot from him. I'm just giving you my opinion. He was the latest guy. Granted, he was an associate, but he was the latest guy prior to, I'll call the mob tube avalanche, right? When, after that you had Pennisi, you had Arulata, you had, Luisi, you had, Paul Tanzo, you had mob tube. So like before the avalanche, right? So I felt he really characterized and gave a good picture of not the macro, but the micro of the Bananos in Howard Beach and in that area. Because I actually knew we had a mutual friend, and when I talked to him, I felt comfortable with him. I interviewed him. I kind of feel that he might have fizzled too quickly. Hopefully he rebounds, if for his sake. But he kind of came on really strong, but then he got tripped up in something pretty stupid. So I wish him well. He reaches out every so often. He was a great guest. And I don't have a super opinion either way. He's always been great to me. I'm one of those guys that unless you harm children or women, and I know I'm going to get comments about my former co-host. Not here to comment about anything about him.
Right.
Unless you do something really bad, if our direct interactions are okay and amicable, I'm gonna talk to you, and I've always been, I think Gene and I have always been okay.
And this is one of the problems I have. I have a problem with people that are associated with people, and they downgrade Gene Borrello, John Alite, and try to say they were nothing in the streets. And yet they don't know what they're talking about. And they're downgrading them out of hate for the person.
Well, Gene I could speak to, because again, we had a mutual friend. Gene had access to a now prominent captain in Bananos. And you generally don't get that access if you were a nobody. I think he even admits it. I think, what if he gotten his stripe? Probably not, because he was crazy, but I think he admits that. A lot of his former colleagues did. The two Mikes got it. A few other guys got it around him. If he was on the street when he got his button, he knows better than me, but I think he admitted that he was a little bit of a wild child, if you will. Yeah. But I think for what he did, he was fairly honest about it. And if I'm not mistaken, he didn't claim to be a super money maker. At least in my interview, he didn't.
No, he claimed to be an enforcer.
Yeah.
But it's funny though, because I have this one podcaster that attacks me on a regular basis. He's a pretty big podcaster. He loves to say F you to me and everything. And but this podcaster that was attacking me knew that Gene Borrello was also part of the conversation. But Gene Borrello sent him a little message saying, if you mention me, I know where you live, and I'm going to come visit you. And this person will not even mention Gene Borrello. So that's, for these people that don't think that Gene Borrello is a little bit feared on the street, maybe not now because he's locked down and owned by the government.
I don't want to lose the audience here, but I'm more worried about playing chess with my son because he's in chess club. I really just want to provide superior content for stuff that I'm interested in, that I believe our audience is interested in.
I'd love to play you a game of chess then. I love chess. I'm a chess man.
Oh, we could do a virtual one online. Yeah.
Oh, I would love to.
But I'm just maybe, I don't know, maybe I'm looking at it differently, or maybe I come from the business angle, not the street angle, and I'm not disparaging anybody, but there's really no reason to do anything offline. And if you don't think the feds, you could track IP addresses, you could track, if people think they're hiding, they do hide my ass VPN bullshit, they'll crack that thing in a second. People think that the fake accounts, the fake names. It's not happening.
And Gene, he admits it. He messed up. He cost himself a ton of money because of his temper.
Yeah.
And he was doing really well. him and John were like making a shitload of money off their show, and he was a loose cannon. And
well, I kind of feel like I think this is before Franzese pivoted fully over to the mob genre, but like the legacy one, and I don't know if you're friendly with him, but Mob Talk Radio was kind of like the legacy show,
right?
Yeah, the legacy show. But we do have to give homage a little bit to Gene and John Alite, because they're the ones who brought it a little bit to the forefront.
Oh yeah, and if you know what it is too with Mob Talk Radio, he has a fantastic voice for what he does, and voice means a lot, you know. And talking about voice, there's a certain voice.
By the way, he was one of the 11 comments that I got, but again,
Oh, okay. Before I play that video of yours, I wanted to ask you one other question.
Yeah.
A guy that really is shaking things up here and gets into it with everybody, Mob Rats.
Yeah.
Now, Mob Rats is having a little feud with Luisi. And
so I got roped into that one too, and I'm happy to. Hold on, I got a screaming baby in the background.
Okay.
Hopefully my fiance can help remediate that soon. So I can speak to that. So I had an issue with Mob Rats directly. It had nothing to do with him getting on my former co-host, and nothing to do with him getting on me, because he did. I had issue where he had two particularly. One who watches your show, but I'll get how it panned out. Two particular people that were commenting about my fiance and my family. And that's where the line was crossed. So again, what a man does through back channel, I reach out to him. We spoke live on the phone through an intermediary device. And I said point blank, I just said, I'm uncomfortable with these two particular people, and this is why. And I am investigating it, not the FBI, not my former co-host. I am investigating it, and I have means, and I can go about it however I want. But the truth of the matter is, I'm going after two people that are talking about my fiance, and that's off limits. And he honored and says, I will, if I see any comments that are like that, I will delete them. And if I see anybody talk about you or anybody's family. So for the most part, he stuck to his word. Okay. Here's where him and I guess have a little bit of a challenge right now is I was on a Wednesday night for Luisi's stuff, and I was on the show, and I'm friendly with Bobby. I super chatted, didn't think anything of it, right? The following week, Bobby does a show and releases, I guess, a video with him with MRE, allegedly, spaced out, right? So now, mind you, I took it down, but I still have it. I'm on with a regular episode with and this is the reason why I remember this. We did one with JSV Capital, as well as our sponsor, as well as with John Pennisi, and we did a regular show, right? Let's go live, guys, because we were vibing. We had a good mojo going, and I'm like, oh man, but Bobby's live, and I don't really want to jam him up, but like, hey, let's just go live, guys. And this is the reason why I remember this. So we went live, didn't think anything of it, right? Now, Mob Rats Exposed did a live, I understand, during Luisi's, and he feels that I gave Luisi that video. Number one, it's categorically untrue, and it cannot be proven because you can't prove a negative. So show proof. So that's number one, right? Number two, if I'm going to have that and dox you, I'm going to do it myself, right? Number three, if I'm going to release it, I would have gave it to you. I'll be honest. If there was one guy that you want to give the dirt on, it's Lee Cole, right? So I didn't do it. He did another video of my former co-host and called me a liar repeatedly. So I reached out to him again, and I would like to resolve it behind the scenes with him, or if he wants to do it publicly, I'm okay with that as well. But I'm not going to have you call me a liar consistently. It's just not going to happen, especially when it's untrue. But I don't dislike the guy. Again, he has his lane. I'll give him this. And I know people get on him about Gotti and the 302s, but outside of that, he doesn't like informants. I've spoken to him, and this is just me, my opinion. I have a feeling he has a personal vendetta against informants because of personal experience. And that's his lane, and I respect that. But you also can't keep calling somebody a liar.
Now you said a good point. Let me bring it up, and some people may not like it, but I don't really care. The 302s with John Gotti Jr. Do you think it's hypocritical if he doesn't go after John Gotti Jr.? A straight answer.
He. The truth of the matter is, and again, so let's look at which context you look at, right? So Willie Boy Johnson was an informant who didn't take the stand, right?
Yes.
And he was killed for that reason, right? Not that I don't wish death or harm upon anybody, but even though it was only one time, you sit with the government in the streets, as I understand, I'm not being a street guy, but you're considered a rat, right? Now, to say, well, he didn't put anybody in jail. And listen, I have no problem with Angel. I have no problem with Cass Bros. I have no problem with MRE. But, you know, I remember driving by Danny Marino's house where I had the ribbon in front because he got put away for 6 years, had to allocute and give up $5 million. If you don't think, and I know Mikey Scars was involved too, but if you don't think Danny Marino had to take a plea based off of Mikey Scars' testimony, as well as those 302s, you're nuts, right?
Yep.
Same thing with Joe Watts, and I believe there was one more. So I'm saying is with MRE, he can say, hey, you know what? He doesn't have to do a video, but he could say, hey, you know what, Angel, I respect that you stick up for your brother, because that's one thing I like about Angel. She will stick up to her family to the death, and I love that. I don't like
without
it.
a doubt. Without a doubt.
But if I was her too, I would not admit it either. But MRE has to be less hypocritical and say, you know what, Angel, we're going to agree to disagree on this. You sit down with the government. You're an informer. Maybe not do a show on your brother. At least admit it and move on. The fact that he doesn't admit it makes people push him more, in my opinion. Just admit it and move on. And the thing I like about John Gotti Jr. now is he is saying, I'm a writer, and he's coming out with Sick Mafia, and he's doing some pretty cool stuff. I think Damien's in it. I get along with Damien. I don't think you do as much. But, you know, I like these guys. I don't dislike them, you know. And to be honest with you, the good thing about what John Gotti Jr. said is I made a big mistake. I believe he owned it. And the other part is spend $5 million in trials. So he put his money where his mouth is. It's a lot easier to roll than it is to spend $5 million. So I see both sides of the coin.
Well, what I find fascinating about John Jr., even though I believe he did a 302, is that he's very intelligent.
Yeah.
And if you listen to him speak, it's like he's much more intelligent than the people attacking him. And I was kind of surprised because if you remember the articles, dumb fella and stuff like that, and then you actually hear him speak, he's not a dumb fella. You know,
Correct.
That was the media, but the media put something on him that's never going to go away.
Yeah.
A dumb fellow remark. And
well, I'd just be interested to see, you know, he's starting his new career. I know the Gotti movie, I didn't hate it, and a lot of people didn't like it. I didn't hate it. It didn't do as well commercially as, you know, maybe they hoped. If you ever not that movie phone, that subscription movie service was like kind of like a lot of it was through there, which helped it. But for the most part, it didn't do that well. But I believe that name still obviously carries weight in terms of a franchise. I'm interested to see what Woodseck Mafia is about. I've been in talks with Cass Bros. I believe he's either producing or involved with that project. So when it gets out, I'd love to hear Chris's take. So again, I don't have any ill will in anybody, but I stand by what I say. I think that he did what he did. He owned a mistake, and he also spent a lot of money fighting the government, you know, which would have been much easier financially to roll. So yeah, I look at both sides of the coin.
And not only did he fight the government, I mean, the government, like, they went for him because of his name.
Yeah.
That was one of those things because he did nothing nearly as bad as his father.
Yeah.
And let me ask you another question. John Gotti Sr. Sometimes people like to make him godlike. Do you think John Gotti Sr. had a lot to do with bringing down the Gambino family?
No, I'll tell you why. It didn't help that he was in the spotlight. It didn't help that he was caught on tape. But a Borgata the sum of the parts has to be greater than the whole, right? And here's the FBI strategy, and it was told from a really good source. They layer, right? They go after an administration and wipe it out. So new administration comes in, they wipe that out. Another administration comes in. They're doing now that with the Columbos. Eventually, you get to a point where the ranks are weak, and they have the inability to get the right people. Third generation Italian, guys that are not street guys, maybe money guys, whatever that is. And that's how you destroy a Brigada. Top-down approach by keep wiping out the administration, right? So that administration, whether it was 1990 or 2000, was going to be wiped out. What hurt the mob is two things. Number one, and they don't like to hear the business angle, lack of innovation. They should have got into cyber crimes earlier. They should have legitimized those industries that they controlled. They should have made it attractive to an Irish guy like you to be an associate, and attractive to a money guy like me to make me a associate, but as a money guy, and you have enough knuckle draggers to protect me. So they didn't recruit the right way because there was lack of innovation and there was lack of money. Sammy rolled because it was over. Yeah. That was just the end of the symptom, right? That was a sneeze. But the influenza and the flu was a lack of innovation and a lack of resources that were available, which brings me to, again, reason number two. By not having capable recruits to backfill is what destroyed the mob. The Calabrian Mafia turnover is over $50 billion a year. The Cosa Nostra in Sicily does well north of $10 billion. The Camorra does $5 billion. So the Italian Mafia kept it real by recruiting family, people from their neighborhoods, and people from their culture. You know, the Gambinos are strong now because the Sicilians came back and they're running the show now. They're going back to their roots. So it was those two things, lack of innovation and lack of recruitment is what killed the mob.
I had a conversation with John DiGiorgio back in the 90s.
Yeah.
And he told me that his biggest fear at that time were the Russians, because the Russians were moving into Brooklyn and there was a lot of ex-KGB officers that were very well educated in spying, and they would take these Italian gangsters out like it was nothing, and nobody would ever know they did it. And I remember having a conversation with him when he told me that that was going to be the mob's downfall. What do you think about that?
That's a great, okay. So there's a book. I don't know if you're a reader, Lee. Hopefully, I think you are. A book called The Octopus by Claire Sterling. Did you ever hear of it?
No.
Okay. To this day, there is a transnational and global mafia, and this is not conspiracy. The Russians have historically had what? They have arms because of former USSR. Now they have money, but they typically had arms, right? Out east, they had the heroin. Colombians had the coke. The Italians had the distribution network. So all these different groups work together at the international level, where the Russians needed the coke. They would either broker them through the Italians or directly with Colombia. In exchange, the Italians took arms. Whether we like it or not, the Sicilians told some of those stuff over to Afghanistan in exchange for poppy. And there was basically a consortium of, and read it in The Octopus, of transnational organized crime that makes billions. The reason why the Russian mob didn't take the Italian mob, the Italian-American Cosa Nostra was too small time for the Brighton Beach guys. The Brighton Beach guys are moving nukes. They're moving huge shipments of drugs. They're moving human trafficking. So they're not worried about extorting Anne and Louis' shop, right? So it usurped it and didn't need to crush it because it was bigger, and the Russian mob didn't waste their time with the local wise guys. And again, it goes back to, why didn't the Italian Americans get into cryptocurrency when they should? Why didn't get into cyber crimes, right? Remember the old brick through the window?
Yeah.
Hey, you need to assure your place, otherwise get a brick through your window. What about somebody comes to you and be like, hey, your business, you're gonna be shut down because you're all computers. Otherwise, you pay us $1,500 a month and nothing will happen to you. So I want to give you two cases, right? Number one, you heard of Anonymous, right?
Yes.
Okay. So there was a guy in Anonymous who was basically roasting El Chapo in the top echelon of the Sinaloa cartel. They found him hanging off a bridge. Now, this is Anonymous, the best hackers in the world. And they went to better hackers and found him, and that guy's dead, right?
Yeah.
You don't think they're using those hackers to make them money in cryptocurrency and move money around. Number two, a paper company recently, it's not even like in the news, I'm surprised. A large paper company got hacked and is ransomed. You can't like get glossy cardstock today because they're one of like the big manufacturers. They got hacked. I think a Russian hacker said you either have to give us X amount of dollars or we're shutting you down. I guess their policy was not to give in to terrorists, digital or not, and they shut them down. So you're going to see a paper supply shortage soon, and paper is going to go way up. The reason why I know this coming publishing. So I just don't know why the mob didn't integrate and get involved with that. And just so you know, really quick, and this is a little lesser known, the Sicilian Cosa Nostra has a thing called High Mafia. High Mafia are the politicians, the judges, the lawyers that operate just like the Calabrians at a level of Freemasonry that are involved with the fabric of society. They're not wise guys on the corner smoking cigarettes.
You know, I remember another thing people don't know about me. I've been married a few times, and one of my wives was Russian, and I had the privilege of going to see her family in Brighton Beach, and it was a very scary situation. And let me explain to you why. I went down to Brighton Beach, and I had a leather jacket on. I was in good shape back then, and I'm walking down with her, and all of a sudden I'm looking around, and I see a lot of other guys wearing leather jackets following me, like in different directions.
Yeah.
And then I said, why are these guys following us? And she says to me, they always follow people they don't know. So here I am walking to her parents' building. And I'm sure you're familiar with Brighton Beach a lot.
Yeah, I used to go to Tatiana Rasputin all the time.
They watch you if they don't know you.
Yeah.
End of story to this day.
Well, you should have put on a fur coat and drove a Nissan Maxima and you would fit in. Just kidding.
But it was funny though, because this was back in 90 early.
Yeah.
Before John DiGiorgio, and it was back then. And at that time, I just had it was just scary because I was thinking to myself, if they wanted to, I could never leave this neighborhood.
Yeah.
That's simple.
Yeah.
You know,
but that's my point though. Like right now with Brighton Beach, there are wise guys there, but they got into bigger scams and stuff, partly because like the oligarchs are the real mob in Russia, and it's ruled by a few, and they got real money and they got bigger fish to fry, and they're working on an international scale. So I think that's why, and I remember even talking to my former co-host, as well as probably 20 different ex-wise guys, whether it be interviewed online or offline, and not one bring up the Russian mob, not out of weakness. It's just they're in a different lane.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, I got a video of yours that I want to enjoyed it. I'm going to put it up right now. And let me know if you can hear it, just in case the voice don't come on.
Yeah.
Okay.
Tom La Vecchia here with a quick edition of
You can hear that, right?
Armchair NBA. Got to talk a little bit about some of the best, some of the meanest comments I've gotten from the prior podcast, a few from the new podcast. And I just figured to do a little top 10 list for you quickly, just have a little fun. If you can't laugh at this stuff, then why even bother? So number one on the list, Tom is a talentless scumbag who never did anything with podcasting until he hooked up with a rat. Thank you. That was mob talk.
Number two, Tom. This is one of my favorites. Tom, you are a complete and total disgrace to all Italian Americans. And the reason why this one was funny was I was in Little Italy at the San Gennaro feast with my fiance eating at Il Cortile. And I literally read this one and I said, wow, this kind of cuts pretty deep. So I'm pretty proud of my Italian American heritage. I'm involved in a lot of associations. I worked a lot of associations. And literally, I was called a disgrace for all Italian Americans. So about more than a half hour later, I went to E. Rossi and Sons. And it's one of the oldest purveyors of like Italian knickknacks, flags, and so forth in Little Italy. I run into a good friend of mine, John, who was the former president of the NIAF.
Can you pause a second, Lee?
Those that know the NIAF, it's a National Italian American Foundation. It's up there with Unico.
Yes.
Just really quick, I got to give this some more color. So I'm literally hearing that I'm a disgrace, right? So then I go to E. Rossi and Son, and this guy is a son. He's accomplished in his own right, but a son of one of the wealthiest Italian American businessmen in the country. So as a result, his son John, my friend, was president of the NIAF. It's one of the largest Italian American foundations in the country. I go to see the guy, and his name is Rossi. He's an elderly guy. He sang a song for us, my fiance and me. And long story short, John even yells from across the room, "That's Tom La Vecchia, one of the best Italian Americans I know." And this is coming from the president of a major society. Meanwhile, 20 minutes before, I was called a disgrace. Anyway, keep going. I might repeat it. You might want to fast forward.
Political connections, a lot of connections in the community, and he was a former president of the NIAF. I go in, I talk to Mr. Rossi. He actually sang a song for us. Hope I can maybe play it. Great song. And what does my friend John say? "Wow, Tom, I really appreciate you. You are really an amazing and one of the best Italian Americans I know." Coming from the former president of the NIAF. And what do I do? See, preceding that is, "Tom, you're a complete disgrace to all Italian Americans." Number 3, "Your fiance is just using you for a meal ticket." Okay, thank you. Well, we have a child and we have a great life and we've been together for a long time. So yeah, but thanks for the comment.
Boy, I'll tell you what, being that you have a kid, you've been together a long time, that's one expensive ticket, Tom.
No, that's what I'm saying. We were talking earlier, right? And I just asked people to pick a lane, right? If I am with my fiance and she's with me for a meal ticket, that would be an operative idea, or the idea would be I have money, right? Now, I also get that I'm a brokester and a fraud. Also, I ask you guys, pick either lane. I can't do both. I can't be the brokester fraud, but then be used for money. It doesn't work that way. So just pick a lane, right? That's all.
Well, one thing about this mafia genre, you'll find out there's never no lanes, and you got.
Can I say something really quick? And I wasn't going to say this, but I'm going to say this. Okay. I went to Brooklyn with my fiance. I ate at Il Coliseo, right? I ran into Lorenzo Menino. Okay. I hope you know who he is. He's from Torrette, Sicily. I know a lot of people from there. They're civilians. They're not mobsters, and the surrounding areas from Sicily, right? The mobsters will never bother me. They have no issue with me, and I'm okay. It's the wannabes that are trying to take me down. Anyway, keep going.
Yep.
Number 4, and this is the most recent from my friend Doug. "Tom, you're a sad drunk, and I'm going to expose you for the fraud that you are." Okay.
Are you still friends with him?
I joke around. It just if you go on my video with Vinny, this guy is super coming for me, so he's being facetious.
Okay.
Next, from my friend Flea Cole, who actually going to speak to soon. "Tom, you were utterly and completely a complete clown."
I feel honored because you put me on this list.
There we go.
Really? "You're another loser podcaster who lives in his mom's basement." So, have my own house.
That actually probably came from a guy that lives in his own basement.
I paid $22,000 a year in property tax. Let's give me a little credit. And I can only write off 10,000 of it.
2014. I don't talk about it too much. One of the most traumatic experiences in my life. Those folks that are what we call adult orphans, when you're an adult and both your parents have passed, it's very rough, right? You give any amount of money to live in my mother's basement.
I wish I did, Lee.
You probably live in your mom's basement. It's something that I actually wish and strive for. I wish I could, but unfortunately I can't. Stop interrupting. You're utterly unwatchable. That one, I'll completely acknowledge. Although I do interrupt, I've gotten a lot better. Anybody who watched New Theory, anybody who watched the old podcast, anybody who watches this, I believe my interview has gotten a lot better. Watch the old episodes, you'll see. Watch the new episodes, and you decide.
So you're a regular Gunnar Lindblom.
You got to see some of my earlier interviews. They're rough. I have ADD. I'm over espressoed usually, and it shows.
Yeah. Well, I interviewed Gunner twice, and when you interview Gunner, it's pure hell, but a lot of people like to hear him talk.
He's a hard interview to manage. I will agree
Yes.
with that.
And how can you eat on air, you fat frick? The FUC coward. I won't curse because I'll probably get demoted.
One thing that I think is very unprofessional in these shows, eating, is one of them.
I was on with Hootie.
No,
And
I seen it actually.
Yeah.
Actually, but the worst I think is unprofessional, smoking. I cannot stand watching a video where these guys is puffing away. It's so unprofessional. And if people want to ever be taken serious as interviewers, stop smoking.
Yeah. Well, I had cigars on, but I announce it ahead of time.
Yeah, cigars are different.
Yeah.
Now, cigars is like you're styling a little bit, but when you're like chain smokers, one right after another, it's
monetized. I was interviewing Hootie for the first time. And
listen, I own the stuff that follow me, I suck at.
This podcast is meant to be. I don't do a lot of preparation by design. It's supposed to mean meant to be. I meet you on like kind of a bus stop. I chat with you, and it's meant to be organic conversation. I also, in the past, have tended to keep it super casual to the point of drinking on air, which I get a lot for, and also when
that I got to cut down on
eating.
That alone.
So the time with Hootie, it ran a lot longer than it thought it would. It was actually a good interview. Check it out. I know he kind of like, gets beat up a lot, but it was an old interview when I first started doing more mobsters. And I was super hungry and I didn't eat and I just started eating. And I got beat up on that. But again, that one was deserved. Tom is a fool for believing that American Cosa Nostra doesn't deal in drugs. I never said that I completely said they didn't. I think that when they're made now, they're told not to. And then I think some guys actually follow that because they think that, the stints are a bit longer. Number 10, the finale. Tom, stop shopping at Walmart. And that was after posting a date night pic. And I think one of the things that I was wearing was actually custom. So I was like, okay, either my custom guy is not good or something, but nevertheless, stop shopping at Walmart. And a nice little bonus for you, because if you decided to watch this long,
my favorite,
add in a number 11. This guy eats raw pork while watching TV in a room temperature bathtub.
I don't know where that came from.
But
well, that was. I'm glad you made that this morning because I'm going to kind of close off this interview because we're heading toward 2 hours, which means I'm definitely going to have to split it up because I think this is going to get a long watch time.
Nice.
Views, I'm not sure. Watch time, I know. I could just feel it when if you have some intellectuals watch this and they like it, they're going to hang out and listen to it.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's what I wanted to ask you about insults. Do you see, to me, what you were talking about were minor insults because you see some of the insults that I get.
Yeah.
And like, from I molested my brother. He killed himself.
Nice.
I mean, stuff that,
Jesus.
I mean, I literally have a woman calling me a child molester all she can. I have people on other channels platforming those people that are calling me child molesters, even though there's absolutely no proof.
Wow.
And this is like an everyday thing. And so what I'm going to ask you is, are you ready to mess around? And you got some pretty sick people in this mafia genre.
Yeah.
And what you've been hit with is nothing.
Yeah.
Are you ready for when they really, and FBS too, he gets some horrible things. Yeah. A matter of fact, he blames me for attacking his wife, which I have never done, not one time.
Yeah.
And I'm not behind these troll pages either.
Yeah.
But this is what the trolls do. They want us to fight and they hit us with the most brutal things going. So are you prepared for that?
Well, I'll give you my strategy. So part one is, and I spoke to this earlier, I'm going to focus on creating superior content. And what I mean by superior content is things that are interesting to people in their area of interest. So for example, so far I had some really 2 great mob interviews this week. I got a great third one. So if you're into the history of the mob, a little deeper in the mob, hear how it affected people in it or in their family, you're going to watch it. So I'm hoping to attract people that are into the better content, and that, superior content will always rise to the top. Part 2, you're always going to get trolls and naysayers the more people you get, right? I actually have a different approach versus my previous co-host and other people. I actually reply to all comments unless they're filtered by YouTube, which a lot are, and I reply and I'm actually nice about it. Like they're like, Tom, you're a talent scumbag. I'll write back, thank you. Like, and it generally diffuses it because it doesn't really bother me and it doesn't go that far. Now, if it goes like really far and they're out for me and that kind of stuff, is, you just simply block and move on. So I can't worry about it. Again, I'm a big Gary Vaynerchuk account fan, and I post a little video on my channel. I didn't monetize it because it was him. It was like kind of a replay. He goes, the second somebody posts a negative comment on your channel, they have already lost. And that's true. And that's how I feel.
Well, I wish you the best on that. And, you're going to have to, it's like people will say to me, oh, Lee gets mad easy and stuff. And I'm thinking to myself, if I was normal, I would be gone.
Correct.
But I enjoy doing this because I have moments like this when I get to interview someone like you.
Thank you. And this is fun, man. I appreciate it. And I know that I got in. He apologized to me offline, and I will apologize back. I took little minor digs at you, but again, it's entertainment. We're good now. And listen, this has been great, and I really appreciate being on your show.
Well, when we interview one another, or then people start talking about people, it's easy for people to adjust opinions of other people. It just is, but I want to play you something I think that you would enjoy. This is Kane Shade made this for me and gave it to me as a gift. It's a short little, not even a minute long.
Yeah.
But I think you enjoy this. Tell me if you've ever seen this.
Yeah.
Sure.
What age you are, you're always battling it. You're always worried about
each week
happening again. Fast and Lilo had an agreement not to talk about the officer.
That's
Guaranteed.
Judy. No, it's not Judy.
The fuck?
Yes, it is. Of course.
This is
Why
your
am I
opinion.
on there?
Yes, I said this is my opinion,
What?
Jeff. Did I say it was your opinion?
it's not
Am I
you.
allowed to have an opinion?
What's that? My trial?
Okay. Ask him to do this show.
The fuck is this?
I don't.
Julia,
No.
it's not you. It's a TV
No,
program.
absolutely not.
Movie.
I did this on my own because it's my show and I can do what I want to do on here.
That's great.
Kane Shade made that for me, and
Good for him.
Because one Mob Rats has a gift of, he's nicknamed me 2 things: Junior
And Pappy or something,
and
right?
Pappy. Yeah. And so they're so funny that I don't mind being called them.
Yeah.
And Kane Shade said, "Hey, Lee, I'm sending you something in your email," and sent that to me. So, and that was after everything that happened with me and Kane Shade.
Wow.
So that's, and nothing really happened. He decided to go in another direction.
Yeah.
Which I'm glad he did, because he has his nice little show over there.
Yeah.
And he's working to get monetized, and
Good for him.
And he will. But have you ever been on his show?
I've never been on a show, and I think he does the Friday night bodega. I have every other weekend childcare with my 2 other kids. So when I have my kids, I generally am occupied on Fridays. So then on the off Fridays, my fiance and try to have date nights and stuff. So I'm generally not available to catch it on first run. I'll check it out.
If he ever asks you for an interview, my advice to you is do it, because he's very good at interviewing.
Yeah, I don't see why not. I'm not doing a lot of media right now, but if you were to ask and he's associated with you, I'd be happy to do it. I'm just working to build up the show, build superior content, and then take it from there.
Well, once I end this, if you can hang out once I end it, I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, we'll wrap it up and I'll hang out.
Okay, so listen, I really appreciated this interview. It went we did a lot of real mafia stuff, and that's what we're supposed to be doing. And so 80% of this is we talk to mob talk, which is, you know, I'm not a mob expert, but when I talk to someone that really does know a lot about the mob, I use it as a learning experience.
Same here.
And so I appreciate it. And people, this is Tom La Vecchia. Please go out and check his Armchair MBA. It's an excellent program. He does all sorts of things. And I'm going to ask you something I always forget. Please hit that subscribe and the like button. Okay? Take care,
Thanks,
people.
Lee.